Welcome to Uprooted from Oakland. I'm your host, Tony Fry, and there's so much to talk about this week. Since we last spoke a week ago, a ton of news has dropped regarding the A's move to Las Vegas, but also nothing happened. The governor of Nevada released a statement claiming to have reached a tentative deal that would morph into legislation to be presented to the Nevada legislature at some point in time. They've really gone from we're going shopping to we're going to consider the possibility of maybe going to a store to potentially purchase something that we haven't decided on yet, really over the course of the last week. Vice Mayor of Oakland, Rebecca Kaplan, was quick to point out a quote attributed to Clark County, saying in a tweet, putting a quote into a press release that is attributed to a government agency as a whole is really weird, especially since there have been no votes. Clark County as a whole can't actually give a quote, a specific person gave that quote. Who was it, or did the governor just make it up? So her point being that until they actually have a vote, they can't behave as a singular entity. So where did that quote even come from? And it's a pretty glaring issue for this press release because it gives the illusion of broad government support that it does not have necessarily, at least not officially. Just another example of all parties involved being absolutely incredible at their jobs. One of my guests tonight also pointed out that this release does not appear anywhere on official stationery, as one would expect from a massive project like this. So for the Fremont site, the A's rolled out the team president, the GM, they had a big press conference, handed out jerseys, showed off renderings, and built up hype for this project. But for the Las Vegas project, which includes a huge relocation of a baseball team, which doesn't happen often, they sent out an email to a few members of the press with a misattributed at best quotation and taking no comments or questions from anybody. So cool story, Dave. You're really knocking this one out of the park, as always. So with that announcement, the A's are about an inch further along than they were a month ago. But fans are reacting as if it's miles closer, and it's really not. To be clear, there is still hope to keep the A's in Oakland. As of right now, they are still closer to a deal in Oakland than they are in Las Vegas. The legislation's already cleared in California. So that could all change by the end of this sentence, but as of right now, it's true. The Democratic-led legislature has come out today, this is in Nevada, has come out today and said that they will not look at any of the governor's special projects until he signs off on the budget. One of those projects is, of course, the A's Stadium. There's also some, I forget what the other project is, but there's some big projects that he wants to have looked at, and the governor has retorted that he won't sign a budget unless the legislature addresses his prioritized projects. So we have a potential standoff as far as getting the legislation passed, but that's all moot since the A's have yet to actually present the legislation in the first place. Reports have come out that the A's will receive a property tax exemption for 30 years, which ensures that the stadium will be publicly owned, which is something that Cavill has sworn was a deal breaker for 5 years. But what it really does is give the Tropicana a tax break, as they'll be able to take 9 acres off of their property when they're doing their taxes. So that is if the site ends up being at the Trop, which brings me back to today's news, that we've also learned that the legislative proposal will be site agnostic, meaning that they're going to ask Nevada, Las Vegas, and Clark County for a ton of money to build something, but not actually tell anyone where they intend to build it. It's been reported that the A's have toured other sites since announcing the Tropicana site, which of course they announced after the Wild Wild West site 2 weeks prior. So couple that with the announcement that the Tropicana is going to be opening a well-publicized poker room in a hotel they plan to demolish in 18 to 24 months, and this entire process just gets more and more ridiculous. It's so ridiculous, in fact, that when asked by our beloved former A's beat writer Susan Slesser, Rob Manfred mistakenly asserted that the deal at MGM would probably get done. What? MGM? If this commissioner can't keep this straight, good Lord. So there's been lots of news, lots of confusion, lots of nothing all at the same time. We still haven't seen a rendering. We still don't know if they've done a traffic study. We still don't know what hurdles the FAA is going to throw on the track. And we don't know how they're going to build a retractable roof stadium on a plot of land that is really better suited for a dome. I assume we don't know because they don't know either, which is really not the best way to go into a multi-billion-dollar project, but they're the experts. And the experts have gone full Howard Hughes and speak only through meaningless press releases, which may or may not actually be their own quotes. To help remind me if I forgot anything from this past week, I have two incredible guests today, folks. We have the biggest Baby A's supporter in baseball, Kim, and the myth, the legend, the gross Coliseum Sewage. Welcome, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Thanks for having us, Tony.
So hang on one sec because these stupid headphones keep unpairing, so I can't hear what you're saying. And I'm talking quick, so it's time to slow myself down. If you're in the chat, make sure to join us and leave your comments so we can participate with what you were adding to the talk. Okay. Well, this is embarrassing.
What, do you hear me?
Hello.
Technology, man. All right, so I'm going to start with Patrick, Coliseum Sewage here. It's nice to meet you finally. So, kind of in person. You were the one that brought up the stationary thing, and the fact that this seems to be kind of a random email that just got sent out to a bunch of people. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
It looks to me like a pushed message out of the governor's office because apologies for my very barky dog, the only press contact listed on there is the governor's press secretary. And so it does seem to me like the governor really is, of all the politicians there, probably the one who seems to be pushing this the most. And I'm going to try to get my dog to be a little quiet. So it does seem like they got probably someone in Clark County to agree to a quote, but not agree to be quoted. Because they just sort of attribute it to the county. And I mean, the way that I have done these things in the past with press releases when I used to do that job is if you were doing a joint one, everybody who was associated with the joint one would have a contact listed at the bottom, usually a primary press person. And it really did just look like something that was put out because I think if they hadn't put anything out, the message was starting to get through that, hey, things look a little stalled. They needed to show momentum. And I think that was a momentum messaging because otherwise I think people were going to talk, this looks like it's a little more stalled than it should be. And then today, of course, it really stalled.
Well, the whole thing seems like it's stalling while it's like they're moving forward and stalling out at the exact same time concurrently. The parallel path right now is nowhere and everywhere all at once.
Yeah, and they're looking at allegedly. I've heard they were shopping another site today. And
that's what they say.
Now that wouldn't surprise me because, of all the sites that we've heard about, this Tropicana site, number one, it's the smallest. Number two, it seems like the one that is least likely to be favorably looked upon for government funding because it's a strip site, on an area of the strip that, yes, the Tropicana may be a little old, but that's not an area of the strip that, needs a lot of government intervention for development. So I'm a little surprised that that's the one they're sticking with if they stick with it.
Mm-hmm. What are you thinking, Kim? You look like you got something to say.
Oh, no, I'm just trying to put the pieces together. There are so many, I am the least personally affected by this. I don't live in the Bay Area. I came to the A's because Melissa Lockard was covering the A's and I wanted to work with her. And then I sort of fell in love with the organization, but from the minor league standpoint. And I didn't really start to care about the big league club until my original group of Baby A's, Matt Olson, that group got to Oakland. And now, I'm looking at the ridiculousness of this whole concept and that it's not, I don't know when it stopped being about baseball and started being a game of chicken between, what's his name? Oh my God. What's the guy's name? What's the owner's name? Fisher. Many Christmas. You know what? I keep thinking Lou Wolf. but between Fisher and the city of Oakland, and it's like, oh my God! I mean, it's been lost. So listening, you all are much more informed on this level than I am. I am just, I'm
Well,
just blown away that this is even happening. I think about the season ticket holders for next year. I think about like, what are they going to do? Where are they going to play their games? I mean, if this plays out to the worst advantage, that's where my mind goes. I haven't gotten deep into the details like you guys have. I think about like, how's it going to play out in the near future. That's just going to be horrible.
well, my most ridiculous thought about this whole thing that I've had within the last couple of days is, what if Lou Wolf was still in the ownership group? Because he was the only one who actually, he's done some development projects, and mostly hotels and stuff like that. But I almost feel like, I know it's sacrilege to say, but his advice might actually have come in handy for the A's here.
I mean,
They don't seem like they know what they're doing.
he is technically still in the ownership group, though, isn't he? Like, he's like a emeritus position or something, but like, he's got a stake in it, I think.
Maybe. He definitely is no longer, primary. Because he did
Right,
sell
but
off,
like,
if not his whole stake, a good bit of it.
but like, to not even go to him for advisement, like, I get it, he didn't get it done either, but he also never really looked in Oakland. He didn't get it done in Fremont. He didn't get it done in San Jose for reasons that were mostly out of his control. But like, he has gotten it done in other business ventures that he's had. David Cavill, okay, he got the Avaya Stadium, but that's really his whole resume. And John Fisher what has he built? He's contributed some money to some political campaigns and some charter schools, but he hasn't built anything. So like, to not even go to these guys for advisement, or to Lou Wolf for advisement, I've wondered that too. It's like, I think he might not have been able to get it done any better, but the branding and the messaging of the whole process wouldn't have been nearly as catastrophic as it is now.
Right.
But I've never seen in any business a deal like this that is so haphazard and so close on one side to be upended by something that seems so far away in another.
Yeah. So
Again, it's just become not about baseball. It's not about baseball. It's a pissing contest. It's a one-upsmanship. It's a play on power that has left the fans and the team just at its mercy.
yeah.
It's sad. It's really sad.
Well, and that's the thing that. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Oh, well,
Well, it's the thing that.
It's metastasizing beyond the A's fan base because like, if this had been kind of a negative publicity thing combined just to the Oakland partisans in the A's fan base, I think that's one thing. But now, with everything that's going on with the threats to Milwaukee, and combining that with what's going on with the A's, I think this is starting to become a threat to the entire fan base of baseball, because people are noticing this no longer about the game. It seems to be about almost extortion.
Right.
That's one thing I pointed out a couple weeks ago, is that almost overnight the national narrative shifted. From, oh, look at you, you get some national beat writer that takes a picture and posts it on Twitter, and it's like, look at how lame the A's fans are. And then the next night it was all of them. Look at what John Fisher has done to this fan base. Like, it shifted immediately. If it would have shifted 2 years ago, maybe we'd be in a different boat right now, because it's like, really, there was like, Susan was the only one that was really saying, no, it's not really on the fans, guys. She was it, and all the other big beat writers were all harping on the fans not showing up. And really, as far as the A's go, it hasn't been about baseball for like 2 or 3 years now. Once they did the fire sale, it became the Dave Cavill show, and that seems to be how it's going to remain for at least in the next 2 or 3 years.
I agree, and it's a shame what's happened to him. I mean, we all, I think, nearly universally, were excited when he joined the club because he was talking things up. They did some stuff with the treehouse. They have the great, innovative, like flexible season ticket plan, A's Access, and I mean, they were starting to win us back despite the kind of conditions at the Coliseum, and then they gave up on that and really seemed to reverse course. And
Well, he did his engagement tour. He was engaging with people. He was talking with people on Twitter, and that's so different from what his predecessor had done. It was like, oh, this is fun. I know. I mean, I agree. That was enticing at the beginning.
And that's why I think Vegas is in that part of the Dave Campbell relationship right now. You know, I think that they're
the dating, the courting part.
Yeah, you know, they're finding, oh, this might be interesting. This might be a good change. I think we could go for this. And then, you know, the more you get to know him, I'm sorry, Vegas, you're going to be disappointed.
Well, I think that the problem he's having in Vegas is that he doesn't have as much to hold over them as he did with us. You could renovate the tree house and Shibe Park Tavern and bring the food trucks in and do all those little things. And we were like, hey, that's awesome. This is great. And, you know, and like Kim was saying, getting on Twitter and actually being able to connect with fans in a way that Lou Wolf never even imagined doing. That goes a long way. He doesn't have that kind of leverage with Las Vegas. So he's already got to start on third base, and he's not good from third base. He's good at getting that base hit. And that's what he did with us. And then when he got waved over to second, it all started falling apart. And now he's got to start Vegas on third base. And I just don't think he's got the stamina or the likability or the charisma or any of that to actually get it across. Because if you talk to him for 10 minutes, you can see that it is just all... I said in an article, he's like a sophomore congressman, right? He knows just enough now to get reelected, but it still has no substance at all. You know, and that's how he behaves. It's all just spin and back talk, and it's just there's no meat on those bones.
Yeah, he can give a talking points interview just fine. But if he was ever interviewing with someone, someone maybe named Tony, who pressed him on some of those concerns and gets beyond the talking points, he completely falls apart.
Yeah. Would you believe that he still won't return my emails?
I totally believe it because, you know, of all the people who've had a chance to really get in there, you got in there, and he didn't like it. You know,
no, I've emailed him. Yeah. I've emailed him like 4 times, I think now, trying to get us to schedule our annual interview, and I did one where I was like, here's 4 questions, just answer these 4 questions for me. You don't even need to talk to me, just answer these 4 questions. And there's not even a no comment or we're not going to talk to you, or, you know, you were a dick last time I talked to you and I don't want to do it again. Nothing. It's just total ghost. But I get the impression, based on how much activity there has been from him and how many articles come out that say the A's were unavailable for comment, that he's probably doing this to actually important people too. It's not just dicks like me. It's real reporters that could actually call him on his stuff and on a much bigger scale and for a much bigger audience. I think maybe because that day that he did the interview with me was also the day he got into it with Damon Bruce, was also the day that he got into it with a fake Siegel account. So that day was a disaster for him, and I think somebody in the A's office had a little bit of knowledge of all of it and said, you know what, maybe you should shut up for a little bit. And it's been 1.5 years now that he's hardly said anything. But he's still on Twitter. You can go on his account and you can see that he's liking tweets. You know, so he's still there. He sees all this. He knows. He might be watching right now. And if you are, Dave, get Fisher to sell and resign. That's all we ask.
Okay, so let's ask. I mean, the things that I'm really curious about is, so say they decide, okay, yeah, we're going to move. They have to like play their games in Vegas from this point on, right? Like nobody's going to be buying tickets to see them in Oakland, are they?
I doubt it. Nobody's doing it now.
No, but I mean, there's still. Yeah, but I mean,
well, you got
to move. What are you going to do? Hey, buy your season tickets for the team that we are going to spend even less money on than we have in years past. Like, realistically, how does that happen? And can you imagine what it feels like to work in that front office, to be a ticket seller, to be somebody like that, or even to be David Forrest, whom I adore, and Billy Bean and all of those guys? Like, their hands are tied. What are they? They are really subject to all of this stuff, and yuck.
Yeah, I think about it in some ways from a product rollout perspective. In my non-sewage life, I do brand management and marketing, and this is not the way I would roll out a product if the A's are the product and I'm introducing them to a new market, I would not want to give people, the little like 10,000 seat minor league treatment in August in Vegas
Oh,
to this team for several years, and several years of a
yeah,
team that's not going
yeah,
to come into that town with stacked with superstars ready to compete. And so, like, what are you going to do for 2 or 3 years? Like,
yeah.
have basically a team that is no better than the Aces taking over the Aces ballpark? Like,
Oh,
The
that's a good point.
Aviators. They're the Aviators, actually,
Aces
yeah,
or Reno.
in Vegas. Yeah, because
yeah.
but let me tell you, it's a gorgeous stadium, beautiful ballpark, and the guys in AAA. I mean, they're sort of interchangeable from what's happening on the big league level too. Whatever. I think things like that happen all the time, but I think the Aviators draw more on a nightly
They do.
basis than the A's do. But also, I mean, I live in Phoenix. I'm not there now, but I live in Phoenix, and I know what it's like. I go to AZL games or what have you on a regular basis, and you bring water and you bring a portable fan or whatever you can. It's not comfortable. That's why we have the Chase Field has its roof and what have you. I don't know how they do it in the summer at the Aviator games. It's got to be hot because it's not great conditions for that. So for big league guys to play under those conditions, 115 degrees at first pitch or whatever it is, that's a whole lot different. Even if you're just waiting it out, what are they never going to play any home games in the summer? I don't. I mean, I think about the logistics of all this, and I can't see it working right.
And I saw something yesterday or today where if they were to do it at the Aviator Stadium, they would have to do some renovations to it to make it MLB ready because the clubhouses are like in left field or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's all these other things. Who's going to pay for that? Fisher's not ponying up for that. It shouldn't be on the Aviators to do it. They're not going to be able to get legislation to pay for it. So who's paying for that? Because that's not going to be cheap to make that a major league stadium for probably 4 years. Because, the Bally's said it'll be 18 to 24 months before they close down the Tropicana. Because even if all the votes come through tomorrow, there's still a lot of stuff to do. Like they don't have architects doing architecture things, and they don't have infrastructure stuff. Like there's a ton of stuff to do. So it'll be 18 to 24 months before they do that, and then another 24 months to get it built. So if everything worked tomorrow, you still got to make that minor league park major league ready for 4 seasons. So it's not something that you're like, well, we can just get by on porta potties and food trucks for a year. This is kind of a long-term commitment that they have to address, and nobody's going to pay for it.
Right. Well, they'll find it. That's why it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And because nobody's going to want to pay for it. They've got the AAA team, which is great, but that's about as far as they'll go.
And I mean, really, they're drawing more for the AAA team than they are in Oakland. And given the construction of this current team, I think the AAA team could beat them.
Oh,
I was actually thinking about that earlier. It's got to weigh on you. It's got to weigh on you when you're driving into work and you're like, this is gonna suck. Like they're playing for their baseball card right now because they're not playing for anything with the A's.
Right.
Oh,
and they know that, and that's why that total bullshit of sending Nick Allen down to AAA until he got right. Fuck that. Are you kidding me? I mean, I don't, I try not to meddle in the GMing of it all, but that pissed me off because Nick Allen, his defense alone means he should be on the roster. Like things like that, like you can't make it happen. You can't make AAA a punishment. You can't. Bring all the boys up. Bring all the babies. Joey Estes, I mean, he's doing well in AA. Bring him up. He's a pitcher. It's not like they don't, have any pitching issues. So,
I agree with that. I would. My only fear, just because I like him so much, is I wish Tony Kemp had a more secure spot on this team. But given his performance this year, I think he's kind of on thin ice. But I think he would be a great person to be in the clubhouse for all these young guys.
Yeah.
But I wish they just send everybody they can up because this is a learning year for everybody, including the manager.
I tell you this, back the Arizona League, if you haven't been, it's like silence. Like when I used to take my kids when I worked with the Mariners, like my daughter would say you had to put your phone on silent on the buttons, like when the buttons made noise, because it's so quiet there. Like nobody cheers, nobody does anything. It's just you're there because everything that you whisper can be heard by like the right fielder, and it's a totally different environment. Opening day a few years ago, Kyle Finnegan, who's pitching for the Washington Nationals today, as a matter of fact. He made his first rehab assignment there. He came back and he's like, this is miserable. And I said, oh, the heat? He said, no, I don't care about the heat. He said, I need the crowd. I need the people. I need the motivation. That kind of thing is like what these guys are missing too in Oakland. Like, how do you get yourself up for being a big leaguer? I mean, when you're at home, especially, I mean, even I'm sure when they're at away games, it's at least a crowd. You feel like you're playing in front of something, for something, and what have you. I mean, it has to get into your mind. These poor guys, And I know I don't want to hear they're making money kind of thing. They're human beings. They play. They're going to work, and it's work. It's not fun for them, and they're not playing. They're working.
Here's the thing. My day job, I'm a professional musician, right? That's not a job. It's a ridiculous. I get paid to play music. It's not a job. This is stupid, right? But it's what I do, and no matter how much they're paying me, if I'm walking up to a shitty gig, I'm driving up to that gig going, oh, I don't want to play this gig. Yeah. And I'll go out there and I'll give it 100% and I will earn that paycheck. But then I'm driving home going, oh, I do not want to do this gig again tomorrow. It's like, it doesn't matter if you're a professional at whatever level you are. Just because you're getting the check does not ease the pain. They're not sitting there on the drive home going, that game sucked, and going through, look how much I made though. It's like,
right.
It's like you said, it's such a bullshit excuse to put that on them. And it's,
they work their whole lives, and they dream of being in front of the big crowds, and then they finally get their chance and get up here, and it's, you can hear one guy in the crowd yelling, "Sell the team."
Oh.
And that's the thing, is you going back to
too. That's the worst part. I mean, that's Oakland.
It's like going back to what you were saying about it not being about baseball. With all that stuff, the signs and the cheering and stuff, it's like even at the baseball games, it's not even about baseball at this point. Right. The narrative is 100%. Surrounding this whole Vegas thing, or the announcers, or the minor league food, or like there's a list of things that they have screwed up over the last 3 years or 4 years or however long it's been since it really went south, that has taken all of our attention away from it. It's like I do this is the 6th or 7th episode I've done. We haven't talked about a game yet, which is kind of the point, but it's like at some point you'd think, yeah, the team sucks and the year sucks and the whole experience sucks, but how about that play at third base 2 nights ago? And that doesn't even come up,
No, I know, and it's a shame. However, there are some Nick Allen defensive plays that have been made recently that could be talked about, but he's just so good. He's so good.
To your point earlier about where they would play next year, the commissioner said that they could actually have a vote by the MLB in June, which, frankly, I don't know if they can pass that. They need 2/3 of MLB owners to approve it, and everybody says, well, billionaires look out for billionaires, and that they're going to just rubber stamp it. But I don't know that that's necessarily true with this billionaire in this particular situation. I don't know that it's a slam dunk. They're going to get the 2/3. It might be closer than they think. But assuming it goes through in June, that gives the A's really half a season of this year with that knowledge that this is going beyond it could happen to this is most likely going to happen. So once they get that approval, things are going to start rolling, because they're not going to get that approval. They're not even going to ask for that approval unless this legislation in Nevada goes through. So that's 2 major steps forward and moving. So that gives them half a season to sit here and play leaving. So all the fans are going to do their farewell tour this year.
Yeah.
We're all going to go and steal a piece of the Coliseum this year, and it'll be, if they did stay for the rest of their lease, which goes through next season, I'd be willing to bet that they would break minor league records for low attendance. We'd be talking hundreds, not even thousands.
And why would you? I mean, aside from parents and what have you, and whatever that kind of thing is, but why would you go? What would you
No.
go to see? I mean, the environment isn't there. It's just it's sad, and those poor
Yeah.
players.
And
Yeah.
there are rumors, of course, about people wanting to take a urinal trough in the last game of the season, which people don't try that. It's not going to work out well. It's not just screws. You got to do the plumbing, and also you're going to want to do that before the game even starts.
Even then,
Yeah.
just because it's before today's game start doesn't mean it was clean for today's game.
Don't try it. Don't try it.
Oh God.
So I had a theory, and this is an absurd theory. Before anybody says anything, I know it's not true, but it's a fun little mind thing. Because somebody had made a comment, I forget who it was, but it was some kind of, I think it was a Raiders writer, talking about Bean and Force, right? And how Bean's been very quiet, which is not uncharacteristic of him, but it's been radio silence from that front office. And he is a minority owner at this point. And I haven't seen any real comment from Forrest, even though he is available to the media more often than Bean is. What if? No, go ahead. Ask your question.
No, I was gonna say, but what does David do? I mean, his hands are tied too. Like, how could he be talking? What could
That's
he
part
say?
of my. That's part of my theory. Is so John Fisher's had this team for what 20 years now. Didn't he get it in 2003 or 4 or something like that. Going on close to 20 years at the very least. And Billy Bean and David Forrest have made him unintentionally have given him a pass because they've been so good at their job.
Yeah.
You know, they've gotten his teams into the playoffs so many times.
Yes.
So he didn't really have the scrutiny on him because who cares how low the payroll is? You're going to the postseason 3 years in a row all the time. Right? In 3 little spurts there. So they've unintentionally kind of given him a free pass from any scrutiny. What if, over this last year or two, whatever it's been, they said, you know what? Let's give him the roster that this payroll deserves. And they stopped going after the guys they used to have gone after. And got rid of the farm system, so there are no Matt Chapmans coming up. And they just went out there and they go, we're going to field the team that this owner deserves, just so that it would add that scrutiny. Like, I know it's not true. They have jobs to do. But, like, Bean is safe. He's a part owner. He's not going anywhere. Forrest is probably safe. And if he isn't safe, he's going to a better team than this. You know, the second the opportunity arises. So, like, what if they were just, like, consciously going, if he's going to give us a historically bad payroll, let's give him a historically bad team.
No, they can't. I mean, they no, they couldn't do it. And plus, the A system is run very well. I am a baby A's proponent, but I am because I see what happens, because I'm in Arizona, because I'm sort of embedded in. I can hear them talking around me, and I can hear how they interact with players, and I know how the decisions are made, and I know the care that they take of all the players, and I love that, and I love that about them. And again, I wasn't an A's fan ever until coming to this, and that was only because of Melissa, and then spending more time with these people, and just seeing they're so good. They care. All the coaches, the things that they've gone through, and the things that they've been, just even with Keith Flipman leaving. Or retiring, I should say. Like, there's no way that's going to suffer. And just men of integrity, David Forrest wouldn't do that. I mean, Billy Bean wouldn't do that. That part wouldn't happen because there's too long of an effect with that. But I mean, I would love to see them somehow be able to separate the minor league system from the big league team, because the minor leaguers don't deserve that. And the good news is, though, is that these guys are so busy. They have 6-day or 6-game series, day and night, and what have you. So they're so busy doing their own stuff, they don't have time to follow the crap that's going on above them. Like, they usually don't even know. They're so absorbed in their own lives and their own games, which they should be. But it's, they too are just sort of playing for themselves. I was watching the Midland game a little while ago, And guy named Feltner, the pitcher Feltner, was like, I didn't know him. I know most of the names and most of the guys on these rosters. I'm like, where'd he come from? They picked him up from a Boston AAA team that let him go, and added him to the roster. That's kind of what they do. That's where, like Billy Owens and David and all of these guys and all the great scouts that they have, and the area scouts getting ready for the draft and the pros. I mean, there's so many people that are affected by this one move. And just that's why it's so sad, because it's not about baseball. It's about winning in business and getting a one-upsmanship on the city of Oakland. I mean, really, that's what you want to do. But there's so many lives that are affected at the trickle down. That's the part that makes it the worst. I mean, that part's a shame. It's a real shame to me.
In your experience,
I've never met them, but my impression is that those Billy Bean and Force, like, they care about the humanity of the people that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And I just don't
absolutely.
think that they would ever make a decision, in this financial environment that they thought would be particularly detrimental to a person. I mean, they've signed players just to have them close to home.
Exactly.
They think
The
about their
Piscotti
players.
thing. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
so in your experience with the Baby A's, do they consider themselves part of the A's organization, or are I'm playing for Midland, and then if they get promoted, now I'm an A or whatever? But like, are they so focused in that, like you said, this stuff doesn't bother them because they're too busy worrying about other stuff? But like, do they even really consider themselves, you think, as a part of that organization, or is that like a separate, like, like Pepsi owns Jack in the Box. The people at Jack in the Box don't think they work for Pepsi. Right. Is it something like that where there's a distinct separation for them?
Well, I think when they're fortunate enough to start spring training together and they're all at the same facilities and they see each other, passing, and they start there. I think the guys that come in sort of mid-season and don't have that go, but it's like you're in the forest, not forest. When you're in one of the minor league teams, because that's where you are. That's all you see. All you see is Lansing, Michigan, Stockton, and what have you. But when they're in Arizona, yeah, I mean, they feel that part of it, and that's really good. But at the same time, as soon as they leave, it's, what are we doing here? They're talking about Lansing and Dayton, not the A's and the Reds.
Someone in the comments, Timothy Blonska-Votrenka, I don't know if that's right, but I just wanted to give it a try. He says, second conspiracy theory, the Giants let Fisher out as a silent assassin to buy the A's and destroy them to secure the Bay territory. Because Fisher was tied up with the A's or with the Giants at one point. That is an interesting, that's a long con that I don't think Fisher's capable of pulling off, but...
I mean, he had something to do with, I don't know exactly what it was, but I think he had a little something to do with just the Giants staying around.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't
think he was. Yeah, he was big on them getting what was then Pac Bell Park.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think he's a secret assassin or anything, just because, like, he's more of a Three Stooges kind of guy.
So, Patrick, you had said, I saw this going around on the Twitters yesterday or the day before, talking about they've made clear that there needs to be some FAA clearances because they're basically building it at the end of the runway of an airport with the lights shining directly into it. So there's going to be, if it's an open retractable roof, there's going to be some FAA. And you have some experience with that because your father was a pilot?
Yeah, and just but the problem, it's not just that the ballpark it looks like it's about a half mile from the taxiways and runways on that one side of the airport. The way the ball, if they were trying to orient the lights and the ballpark for that strip view that they're touting, a retractable stadium, retractable roof with a strip view, most lights are behind home plate and then in the outfield. The way they would kind of be shining, unless there was some real creative architecture, would be directly down one of the taxiways there and only a half mile from it. And I know the strip is full of amazingly bright lights, but they're not directional lights right down the taxiway. And so I feel like they got to be a little bit more honest about like the actual limitations of that space. Now, I'm sure that there are ways around it, but the FAA is not going to look kindly on that sort of visual distraction in a taxiway at night. And so if they were to reorient the field in the traditional sort of orientation that would face, because they don't want the batter's eye facing, west, I don't think it would be as big of an issue, but then they would lose the views that they're promising and just have like, a view of the airport where I don't, it's, I think that they're stuck with either doing a dome, like, I don't know how they get the strip view and the retractable roof on such a small space, because the lights are an issue. And the other issue there is, I think this has actually come up before, but I'm not able to remember exactly what airport it was, but there's some issue with the StatCast because either the radar or radio frequencies that the StatCast system uses can send off a little bit of an interference. And since they're only like a half mile from those runways, that might be an issue. And I mean, again, all these things, I think the FAA is not in the business of telling private business absolutely not, but it is saying, hey, you've got to mitigate this and that.
Here's the rules.
And that would, I think, cause, if they were able to do it, it would certainly cost more because they'd have to engineer a solution for these problems that the FAA is going to tell them, like, hey, you need to fix this. You can't have those lights shining in that direction that way. And then, there are always going to be engineering fixes, but they cost money. And how the A's can go in and say, hey, this is how much the ballpark's going to cost, when it's the same price no matter what plot of land they put it on or how big it is. I don't know how they're able to say that. And I just wish that, not just the fans, but like the people in Las Vegas, because we've gotten to know Fisher and his gang. I wish that everything that they're being sold about this park, I wish that they would question every little detail, because the A's had to reorient the design of their field at Howard Terminal, because their original thing was, look, it's water view, it's going to be faced up to the water. No, you can't do that because that would face too close to the west, and it would be a distraction for the batter's eye. So they had to change the orientation of the field, and they can't promise that. They know that. They had to change that already in Oakland. So how they are making the same mistake in Vegas, it can't be a mistake. It has to be a sales pitch that they know they're probably going to have to change. And I just wish that the people of Vegas would ask questions about every little promise they're being made, because we know that they break them. And that's one that I don't see how they keep, because, the FAA is going to have something to say about the StatCast and about the lights headed straight down the taxiway. Now, it's not down a runway, but a taxiway is, almost equally as important. 2 planes were delayed because of, taxiway incursions in they aborted takeoff and landing in SFO, I think last week, because of errant taxiway incursions, and those are, it's not a small thing.
Yeah. Daniel says in the comments the 49ers had to redo the lights where they are on the approach to San Jose Airport. And as for the StatCast issue, that was also at Levi Stadium. And Levi Stadium is not nearly as close as this Tropicana Stadium will be. It's a direct flight path. I used to live about a 20-second walk from Levi Stadium. It is a direct flight path for San Jose Airport, depending on which way the winds are going. So that's a factor, but it is a little further away, and they still had those issues. So that's something that I'm sure the A's have all thought about, and Dave Cavill is on it. And the thing you have to understand, as Dave would say, there's also the and this is being talked about a lot, is I played a clip on here a couple weeks ago where he's talking to Las Vegas media, and he says the reason they chose the Wild West site, which is on the other side of the highway, so off strip, different traffic situation, different airport situation, all the whole thing is different. The reason they chose that is because it had everything that their research team had determined that Las Vegas people wanted. Right? They supposedly did the focus groups and all that stuff just like they did in Oakland. Even though you go on Twitter, you don't hear Las Vegas people talking about any of this. right? When we were doing the focus groups in Oakland, everybody that did one of those focus groups was on Twitter talking about it, as soon as it was done. But you hear none of this. So that's probably something else that they talked to 6 guys on this trip, and that is the whole basis for the whole thing. But they supposedly talked to people, and everybody's concerns were ingress and egress, right? Because locals don't want to go hang out on the strip and have to deal with the traffic for the horrible congestion there. It was all about being able to build a district around it so they could have dining and hotels and all that kind of stuff, shops, all that built around it. All that stuff, same stuff you said about Howard Terminal. Now we go here, they get nothing. They don't own the land, which was critical. They don't have the ancillary development that was critical. There was, as if you asked David, that was the whole way they were going to finance this team and build a championship team, was with the money they were making off of the outside stuff, because the ticket sales weren't going to be enough. So overnight, all that disappeared. What do you think is their actual game plan here? Like, what's their path forward on this, where they can actually be a successful team that can actually pay off these commitments that they're committing to? Because some of the stuff with Clark County specifically, if they don't meet their requirements to pay this stuff back, it reverts to property tax increases for the county. So they're on the hook for that, but because they have that safety net of if we don't pay it, then the county will cover it. There's no harm, no foul for them. What's their plan here? How are they possibly going to field a championship team, having abandoned all the stuff that they said was requisite to do that?
Well, and wasn't there also like a big component of giving back to the community as well? The
community benefits
population
package.
And things like that. Yeah, that I thought was a big part of
in
it.
Oakland was a huge thing.
And I haven't seen anything about that in anything even mentioned in the Vegas deal. And
I don't think they've asked for one.
Oh my God.
But the problem, here's one thing that I don't understand. I will admit, I do not understand how this is going to work. Maybe I'm sure someone does. They're not going to own, but they're going to rent the Tropicana ballpark site. Yet they've committed to spending basically $1 billion to build something that they will then rent.
This is the thing that blows my mind. Are they even renting the land, though? Every report I've seen says that Bally's is giving them 9 acres. There has not been a price tag attached to that with rent, except for one line of one document that said, for if Bally's has to kick in the $175 million that they're willing to kick in, that the A's rent would go up commensurate to that payment. But there's nowhere does it say that they're actually paying rent on it, and then they're getting the property tax exemption for property they don't actually own.
And who's getting the one of the big things of tax benefits of this is going to be the depreciation deduction, because you build something that big every year, it declines in value. You can depreciate. You can take the depreciation off of your top line of your taxes. Who's getting that deduction? Is it the A's? Is it Bally's? Is it and if it's the city, it doesn't really matter, because they wouldn't. It's not a concern. But
I mean, a lot of that stuff, unless it's tied up in the legislation that's supposedly in the works, we'll never know. That'll be private contracts between the A's and Bally's. But it is all stuff that it's like, this is such a complicated. It's so much more complicated than just buying a plot of land and building a stadium. To have. You've got Bally's, you've got the group that actually owns the land, which I think is different than Bally's. You've got state, county, and city ordinances and taxes and all that kind of stuff. There's so many components where it would be so much easier, even at Howard Terminal, because they would have that area to themselves. But especially at the current site, like you've gone from the biggest picture, grand scheme, I've got great dreams of our future, but complicated plan, and bypassed the simple plan and gone to we can get by on the bare minimum as long as we make it as complicated as possible and involve as many people as possible and have as little control as possible. That's a big jump over the course of like 2 months.
Yeah.
And for every for every change that this plan is going to no doubt undergo, because it's not much of a plan, it's more of an idea, every change is going to cost money and time. And I don't think the A's, with the agreements that they've signed up for, are going to say, "Oh yeah, that we're the ones who need to spend that money." They're going to say, "No, this is, we're renting this. It's a public facility. The bill for these changes is going to fall on the public."
Which is what you've got right now in Milwaukee, because Milwaukee they're saying, the Brewers are saying, we need these amenities updated or whatever, and that, because they're tenants, that falls on Milwaukee, who all of a sudden have to come up with $500 million to do these improvements. So you're setting yourself up.
And Manfred kind of cast the Brewers as, being really good stewards, and almost 50-50 stewards in terms of the expenses of that ballpark's upkeep, when in reality it's more like the organization that the city, it's like a city-county kind of thing, kind of like the Coliseum, but not exactly. They pay 78% of the maintenance fees, and the team is only responsible for like 22%.
Well,
and
make
now
no
they're
mistake,
coming in and demanding like $500 million.
Manfred, was Selig's guy, and that's all his. So he's never going to say a bad word about. He knows so many bad things about Manfred. He's going to watch himself. He's going to give Milwaukee the most leeway of anybody. But I will tell you that the ballpark that we have in Arizona, it was on the ballot twice, I think, and we voted it down. We were not going to pay for it, and the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors overrode us and made that decision. And from that, some whack job went to the supervisors meeting with a gun and shot Mary Rose Wilcox, one of our supervisors, in the leg. She was fine afterward, but these things happen, and it's just like, if they're going to make enough money out of it, they're going to bypass whatever the voters want, but it's not going to be good. And really, we had the 2001, World Championship, and they're looking better now, but nobody goes to those games. They couldn't even sell out playoff games when they were good for that little bit of time a couple of years ago.
Meanwhile, Oakland set a record for a playoff game, but they're not a major league market anymore. And then you have to ask yourself, if the Coliseum site, the current site, is so horrible for baseball, so bad for development, despite it being just a blank slate essentially, why did they buy half the land? Why did they buy the county share of the land?
Yeah, why were the Raiders fine with building on that?
And the whole reason, not the whole reason, but a large reason that the Raiders left was because the A's said, no, you can't build a stadium here because we're going to build a stadium here. They didn't. They bought half the land that they're doing nothing with, unless they're just sitting on it waiting for it to be more valuable, which it probably is now, because that one league, I forget the exact title, but they are in an ENA now with the city of Oakland to buy out their half. So if that goes through, we have potentially a sports team and a sports league splitting ownership of this land that the A's don't even want. They don't want to build on it or anything, and they've blown their chance of buying the other half from Oakland so that they could own it outright. But why did they do it in the first place? If that was never the plan, why did they do? If I'm going to go buy a car, I don't, on my way to buying the car, buy a motorcycle I'm never going to use. Focus on the car.
I wish the people in, the politicians in Vegas and the people, potentially this could go before the voters, I just want them, I appreciate, and I really mean this, I appreciate the can-do attitude that Nevada politicians and citizens are bringing to this project. They are not in the business of saying no. I appreciate that, and I think that is good to a point. And I think they need to realize that part of the reason that in Oakland this has been a bit of a hang-up is because we've been burned before by bad deals with sports teams. The Raiders, Mount Davis, and then the Raiders moving. And, that left Oakland on the hook for like $100 million. And it was a bad deal, and it kind of destroyed what was a very nice baseball park. And, I just wish that they keep the can-do attitude, but ask and demand answers to these sometimes not even tough questions, basic questions. But don't be afraid to ask the tough ones and really nitpick these details, because they're dealing with, a pair of guys in Fisher and Cavill who, promise you Cirque du Soleil and bring you like somebody's
Ringling
backyard
Brothers.
wrestling tournament.
That pony right in front of the grocery store.
Yeah.
When you think about it, aside from the politicians who are getting greased and who will definitely personally benefit from it, and that's why they're going to vote for it. And I have a real problem with anybody named Steve Yeager going against anything that I want, but that's beside the point. What is the benefit of them to take a team that's going to come with so much baggage instead of having an expansion team where there's time invested and actual research done, and you can like the Golden Knights are, they're awesome, and they've got great, they've done everything right. Let's put it that way. Why wouldn't they want the equivalent of that to a baseball team?
Their hockey team.
They're not pressing for it.
Their hockey team has home field advantage, and their football team is a visitor's ballpark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and they're going to get the exact same thing with the A's, except they're going to get it 81 days a year, including 110-degree Tuesday nights in May when baseball's meaningless, know. Right. And you're competing against Sunday football is a big ticket event. That is a tourist attraction. People will, because it's always on a weekend, people will plan, I'm going to go to Vegas and the Chiefs are playing, so I'm going to go to a game and watch the Chiefs while I'm there. Baseball is not. And they're going to be competing with 5 Cirque du Soleil shows and whoever's in residency at the big casino. It's like the A's can't go up against Celine Dion and Britney Spears and Cirque du Soleil 81 nights a year and come out ahead 81 times. And that's what they're banking on, because like they said, it's going to be 2.5 million seats sold. That's 33,000 seats a game or whatever it comes in, more than they actually say they're going to build to actually get those numbers, and they just can't do it.
Well, I think there's an opportunity there for them to build a local audience during the weekday. The weeknight games, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, those are not going to be predominantly dominated by fans from other teams coming in. You're not going to come in from Milwaukee for a Tuesday night game that often. Not that many people anyway. Not enough to overwhelm the local crowd. So there's opportunities for them to market to the local crowd for the weekday games, but you're still going to have those weekends, especially with the bigger teams that are just completely dominated by the other team's fans.
But you're going to be competing against your AAA team, where a minimum ticket price is $15 compared to the minimum ticket price of a big league game, and all the red tape and all the rigmarole that you have to go through to go to a big league game. I'd just rather go to a minor league game anyway, but I'd rather go to the AAA team and go sit there and have that experience and have to worry about a big league. Like, they're competing against themselves, and the big league club, will lose, because at least the Aviators they're Vegas born too, just like the Golden Knights are. At least that's something.
Well, that's the thing. It's like if I'm not real passionate about baseball, which is the crowd you're trying to draw on a Tuesday night.
Yep.
I'd much rather go to a minor league game. Honestly, they're just as fun, if not more fun.
Yes.
And if I don't care about the big names on the back of the jersey, to save $100 to for me and Elizabeth and my son to go to a game, I'd do that 10 times out of 10. Because I have no vested interest in the big league team. So they have to build that vested interest in Las Vegas, or it's not going to work. Because baseball and Manfred and the folks in the commissioner's office have never had their fingers on the pulse of anything. But they definitely don't have their fingers on the pulse of how popular baseball is. I said it a couple weeks ago. My mom knows who Steph Curry is. My mom knows who LeBron, and she does not care about sports in the least. She knows LeBron James. She knows Tiger Woods. She knew Joe Montana. She knew those names. I guarantee you she does not know who Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout are. Because MLB does not have the cultural impact. It does not have the multi-state reach, right? It's a very local, communal thing. And like baseball is my sport. It's the only sport I care about. But it's the communal stuff, you know, and they have never understood. They think that it's just everybody loves them all the time and that they can just relocate and it's going to be just as good. It's not going to be just as good.
That's why I think that, you know, when they ever do expansion, Dave Stewart's group that he's putting together for a national team, I think has potential to elevate the voices and the ideas that can bring baseball more, you know, into better touch with a wider group of people. Because, you know, I think he's got ideas and he's got tradition in the game that, you know, there's a chance to really make a positive difference through that. And I wish that Oakland had done a better job of bringing him into the fold. The city had done a better job of bringing him into the fold in the, you know, deals that he was trying to make, and as part of his interest in being a part owner of the A's. But
if you
luck in Nashville,
if you take the words that he said in this most recent interview as gospel truth, he really got screwed by Oakland, and they should be ashamed of the way they treated him. Yeah, they should be ashamed of the way they treated him.
But
and this is for those who don't know, that's the city I'm talking about, not the team. It's the city really bit it on dealing with Dave Stewart. And yes, Kim, you're wearing a what here? Nashville Stars shirt?
Stars hat. Yes, I love it. I wear it all the time. I've got a shirt and a sweatshirt too, and because once all this stuff went down with Dave and Lonnie Murray too. It's not just Dave. Lonnie's in there too. She's an amazing, powerful woman who is going to be at the head of some big league club at some point. I know that. When they did that, I got mad and I went and just bought everything I could at the Nashville Stars shop. So go do that too. And it's good quality things too. But yeah, I mean, the fact that they totally got the shaft, it's like, oh my God, why did they do that? Like, they would be perfect. I didn't read the most recent article because I don't have my subscription to the Chronicle anymore. But I've heard enough comments about it, and I heard what David said before, and it's atrocious. But at the same time,
I mean, the broad strokes, if anybody else hasn't read it, is that Oakland didn't think he had enough connection to Oakland to pull it off. And part of his group, he had Ricky Henderson in there. Is there any person on the planet that's got more connection to Oakland than Ricky Henderson? You know? I mean, come on. So it's like, it was a major, I felt insulted for him, you know, on that. Ginger in the chat says more tinfoil hat stuff for the group. They get an oversized cut, the A's get an oversized cut of expansion cash for securing a stadium for the expansion team. This has been my theory that since the day that parallel paths were announced, was that Manfred went to John Fisher and Dave Cavill and said, look, you tell everybody you are looking into Vegas. That'll put the pressure on Oakland. Mm-hmm. They'll get a deal done, and all the due diligence that you did in Las Vegas, we will use in our research and due diligence for an expansion team, and we'll give you a little cut under the table that the rest of the teams aren't getting, because you will put expense and all that into there. That's been my go-to since the day this whole thing was announced. And I think that still might be true, but the wrench in the gears is nobody expected the mayor of Oakland to come back and go, you want Vegas? Fine. Talk to us when you're serious, and call their bluff. And now they're scrambling, and that's why they are on all sorts of different properties, and they don't have the legislation done, and there's no renderings, and they're kind of scrambling because they thought, we are never going to build here. This is just a leverage play. And when Oakland called their bluff, now they've got no leverage anywhere, and they're scrambling because it's like, well, if Oakland's not going to do it, we got to do it somewhere, because they've got till the end of the year to get that revenue share. So that's been my theory this whole time. I still subscribe to that theory, even though it's gone south for them. I still think that's what's gone on here.
I've heard crazier things. It's a little out there, but I honestly, there's a lot to be said for baseball using the A's as a guinea pig into how ready Las Vegas is for an expansion team. And I mean, I may be a little biased right now, but I feel like Las Vegas is primed for an expansion team.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe this is just them, Major League Baseball using the A's situation to gain leverage in Oakland and to feel out how Vegas is going to react. And I'd have to say, so far, Vegas is winning that argument that they're ready for a team now. But, I do think that when the mayor of Oakland said, enough, you have an offer on the table here, we're not going to let you use another city against us. I think that was the right call, and I do not think that's what the A's expected.
No, because it's their own ego. It's always driven, as particularly if Cavill's involved, there is a level of ego. You keep seeing reports that everybody in Las Vegas knows that he went to Stanford, right? Because that's his ego too, that he's got to remind everybody all the time. And everything that he does is so self-serving that he thought, if we tell him we're going to go to Vegas, they're going to be crawling, they're going to be banging down the doors at Jack London Square trying to get into the office to get us back at the table. And it was a big hit for him, I'm sure, when he found out that wasn't the case. I still think it's a possibility because two Bally's, or Bally's, I don't know exactly how to say it, in their agreement, supposedly, they can back out of this at any point. Their agreement, just like the A's legislation is supposedly site agnostic, their agreement is team agnostic. They can back out of this at any point, up to the point of opening night, as far as I read it. So they could easily, once the legislation gets through, go, you know what? If we've gone this far and we're going to put in this much money and we're tearing the building down anyway, why don't we just buy our own team and get an ownership group together to do it? They could kick the A's out in a heartbeat. So I think that's still, the Vegas falling through and going in favor of Oakland is still a possibility on 1,000 different fronts. But I think the way everything is being worded ambiguously, whether through state legislation or private contracts, it does lend itself to conspiracy theories, right? It's like you don't have to stretch that far to go, this doesn't seem fishy. Because if I was writing the contract to start a team with Kim, I'd put Kim's name in it. I wouldn't be like Kim or whoever else at our discretion.
Yes.
Well, if I were moving a team, or potentially moving a team, and I was the owner of the team or the team president, I would hold a press conference. Because plenty of people have questions. Reasonable questions.
If this is such a good deal, if this is such a good deal, why has, except for this week, the last two press releases have been released either Thursday or Friday night, in the middle of the night near a weekend, which any politician will tell you, if you want to kill a negative story, release it Friday night, late at night. So they've killed two stories. They've kept themselves out of the news cycle at least twice. And now this legislation is supposedly going to come in, I think they said Saturday, the weekend of a holiday.
And
if it happens, it was
when's the last day of the session too?
The whole legislation has been, that schedule has changed 15 times. I think the legislation goes till June 5th. I think it's the first week of June.
Okay.
So they're gonna drop it on a holiday weekend, 6 days before the end of the session, because nothing says we have confidence in this project and this legislation and this deal like trying to slip it in under the radar and not get any press coverage for it, for moving a friggin' Major League Baseball team. Everything about it is either if it's not suspicious, it's stupid beyond belief.
Yeah.
And I mean, Vegas, is this what you want? Like, you deserve a chance at a Major League Baseball team. Your own team. You did great with the Knights. You can get a better deal. You can get a better deal, and I hate to say it right now, but you can get a better team.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they deserve a baseball version of the Golden Knights. That's all that they should tolerate. Nothing until that.
So taking some stuff from the comment section here, Timothy, who never confirmed or denied whether I got his last name right, says, I'll get behind the Las Vegas Neons MLB team. Las Vegas A's will never get my soul or my wallet. I'm prepared to buy Diamondback stuff as a fallback for my baseball fandom. He also says that the Aviators have free parking too. So the A's will have no parking, 0, and the Aviators will be giving it away.
So wait. No parking at the new, at anything proposed?
No, there's nowhere to put it on 9 acres.
Do you know how hot it is in the summer? Even
Did
in
you-
Arizona, we have...
The Bally's interview, the guy from Bally's.
Did you see the owner of Bally's yesterday?
Yeah.
No.
He was like, people enjoy parking a distance from the stadium and walking because over those couple miles it builds excitement for the game they're about to see. And I'm like,
What?
yeah, in 110 degrees in Vegas, by the time I get to the stadium, I'm going to want to go home.
He tried to spin the no parking as part of the baseball experience. Yeah, when I got to go to a Giants game and I got to park a mile away or get off a BART station a little bit of ways, that walk is fine because it's 50 degrees outside. And I'm in San Francisco. You're telling me that a mile-long walk in 110 degrees with a billion distractions is good for your team?
Oh,
Get out of here.
No.
It's
That's
so poorly
awful.
thought through.
J-Rub in the chat says, this all comes down to Manfred and his agenda. His contract expires this year. Timothy, when I said they don't have their pulse on anything, I shouldn't even be sharing this one. And when I said they don't have their pulse on anything, he said, not true. Manfred has his finger on the pulse of Fisher's butt. Keeping it classy, Tim. Can Alameda County buy back the half they sold to the A's, or is it more complicated? I think it's just a real estate deal. They can sell it back to whoever wants to pay for it. I don't think Alameda County's interested, though. Because the A's haven't actually paid for it yet. This is a scenario where they've got a certain number of years, I forget what it is, to pay it off. If they move, they have to pay it off in full before they leave, but they have not finished paying for it yet, so I think it can go to whoever wants to buy it. Timothy again, the problem I have with seeing Vegas as an MLB city is the isolation. You have to attract Vegas 100% because the next biggest city is Pahrump, which is true. They are in the largest county in Nevada.
It will be the smallest market with 3 major sports teams, but just a few years ago, it was the largest market without any. So it's a rapid growth.
And it'll make that area of the country so congested. You have the A's, Diamondbacks, Padres, Dodgers, and Angels. That's 5 baseball teams within 350 miles of each other. The A's will be closer to the Angels in Vegas than they are in Oakland. So that's a lot of, and this is Las Vegas is pretty known for being Dodgers territory, even though market-wise it's split amongst all 5 of those teams right now. But in reality, it's a Dodgers fandom there, who can still.
The team was there for a while.
And they can still. What's a drive from Las Vegas to L.A. to watch weekends worth of Dodgers games? So that's not that big a deal for them.
On the agenda in Vegas, there is also talk of a high-speed rail connection from Los Angeles area to Vegas.
Oh my God! Do you know how long that would take to build?
Yeah, that would be forever.
Although apparently the Nevada side will be done in 2 weeks.
Everything moves faster in Nevada. I mean, you can just get stuff done. NorCal Nodders, who was a very popular guest on this show a couple weeks ago, says, I don't think it's a conspiracy as much as it is as a strategy. All pro teams play games like that every time a stadium and move is offered. That's true. I think why we say it's a conspiracy because we have nothing to back it up other than the volumes and volumes of evidence that are made public. I guess that's about it. Oh, Ginger says they can do just a gondola from LA to Vegas.
That's funny.
Salt Lake City just announced plans for a gondola up, I think on the east bench of Salt Lake City. They're going. I saw that today, and I was like, "Oh no, not another gondola project."
So I proposed an idea. couple weeks ago that turned out to be something Melissa Lockhart had proposed a year ago, but I didn't see her proposal when I wrote it. We've had private talks. We're cool. I didn't steal it from her.
Nobody steals
but-
from Melissa.
But people were tagging her and I going, hey, wasn't this your idea? But I said, why don't you just make it a visitor ballpark? Right? Then you could do it every weekend. You could just do Friday, Saturday, Sunday games. You don't have to worry about the weekday crowds. And both teams are visiting teams. So the A's are on the road this week. The Yankees are on the road this week. Put them both in Vegas for a weekend. It doesn't take anything out of your home gate because you were going to be away anyway. And now it's an attraction. It's going to be the national broadcast team. And MLB now has a stadium that they can use for the All-Star game every year. They can use for the World Baseball Classic if it's hosted here. They can use for minor league championships. All this stuff, that they could do. Having access to this park that was sunny and warm and not dependent on it didn't really matter if it turned a profit or not because it's only paying for itself. It's not paying to support a team. And I think but the way that Bally's has worded things, there's an outside chance that this whole thing could fall apart with the A's and they could still say, we're still going to build the park. And now we've just got a baseball stadium and bring that to MLB and go, we've got a baseball stadium, your move. Expansion, permanent visitor thing. But if you did that, if you took out just the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they get their 81 games a year, almost. I think it's 79 or whatever. But they get all of them, but it's all weekend games. So you're not having to fill that park on an off night, off season. It's all weekends. It's a win-win-win for everybody. And it creates an event much like the Field of Dreams stuff that they were doing. Mm-hmm. It creates some kind of event where it's like this week in Vegas, Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, all that kind of stuff. I still think it's a good idea. And I think the way things are going right now, it could easily be shifted if they got a deal in Oakland.
I love that idea, but I have to say one thing that I don't know if the A's really predicted when they thought about their 30,000 seat stadium is I think if Vegas did that, they would have to build a larger ballpark because a 30,000 seat ballpark is never going to get an All-Star game.
That's true.
All-Star weekend that's 60,000 people, 50,000 people, for the home run derby, for all that. 30,000 seats is not enough for Major League Baseball to say, oh yeah, sure, have the All-Star game several years. Whereas if Vegas built a bigger stadium, they could host the All-Star game every year with this.
That was my idea, is that is just the home for the All-Star game. Because right now it's like Oakland's never going to get it again, unless they built a new park. San Francisco hasn't had it in a long time. It's not like it gets evenly distributed around, But Bally's has more land. Like, they're giving the A's 9 acres, but if they were to turn it around and say, you know what, we're going to build it anyway, they could build it on 15 acres. Right? They've got all the land that they need, and they can build it into the hotel and the casino and all that kind of stuff. So they're the ones with the flexibility and the leverage at this point. The A's have nothing. They have no leverage. They have no flexibility. They have no wiggle room. They have nothing.
Well, maybe the prodigal A's will come home.
Maybe. I'm getting just in from J-Rod. Cavill and Fisher just announced they got approved financing to build in the metaverse, which I think Cavill might be living in the metaverse full time at this point. But I love you, Dave. Come on the show next week. I'd love to chat. Timothy says the MLB All-Star Game's at Allegiant. Take that, Raiders. You'll never be rid of the A's.
I love that.
If I was Mark Davis, I might be kind of campaigning with the owners of the baseball right now, particularly the ones in that clump in Southern California and Arizona. I might be campaigning on them and putting a little money because there is significant overlap between football season and baseball season. Mm-hmm. And he hates the A's ownership for everything that happened to him, so there might be incentive just as a vindictive move to start campaigning those guys and be like, hey, do you really want the Giants to have the largest unshared territory in baseball? Do you?
And he was asked about, the possibility of synergies with the A's, this whole sports district idea. And he said, basically that he's open to the idea, but never with this ownership group.
That seems to be a common refrain. Because you'll notice every comment that comes out of City Hall in Oakland is, we'd love to do the work with the A's. We'd really love to do the work with the A's new ownership group. Like, there's always that undercurrent of, if you were to sell, this would be done on Monday, you know?
Yeah.
Well, they're not.
Any last...
I mean, the whole thing.
No.
Dave Stewart's group. I don't think the city treated them well enough. The city's
No.
made its own share of screws, but I really think now, honestly, most of the problem is the people in charge of negotiating for the A's.
And that's the thing, is people are quick, especially on Twitter, they're quick. If you say the A's have screwed this all up, they're quick on there to go, well, the city didn't want him, the city didn't do this. And yes, the city is not without blame. They could have expedited things. This thing could have moved a lot faster. They could have made more progress during COVID when the negotiations seemed to have just stopped. But they also got most of the financing.
We don't know what happened behind the scenes.
And they got most of the funding, and they cleared a lot of the red tape for Howard Terminal, and the lawsuits cleared, and the legislation cleared, and all that kind of stuff happened in Oakland. And that's why I said at the top of the show, they're still closer to a deal in Oakland than they are in Las Vegas.
Yes,
as of right this minute.
Really are.
As of right this minute. And so, you can put some blame on Oakland, but you also have to realize who they're dealing with. And if what we see in Vegas is indicative at all of how they were behaving in Oakland, that takes even more blame away from the city of Oakland, in my book. Mm-hmm. Because why would anyone want to do business with this? This is bad faith negotiation all around. As I said earlier, this is good. Somebody will write about this whole process. They'll write a book about it, and this will be taught in business schools of the exact wrong way to do business.
Well, not at Stanford.
They'll definitely teach it at Berkeley, though. Kim, any last thoughts before we close out?
No, thanks for having me on. I really
thank
enjoyed this. You guys are so knowledgeable on all the details, and appreciate the opportunity.
It was a pleasure having you. I don't think I've talked to you since I saw you in Arizona 6 or 7 years. It's 8 or 9 years ago now, probably.
Was it that? Oh my God! At Don
at least
when it was still there.
Yeah, when it was still there.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. If you're there.
And she's still around. And when I went to, you were talking about no noise in the Arizona leagues. I went to the All-Star game, or was that what it was? The Arizona League All-Stars?
The Fall Stars, yeah.
Fall Stars. I went to their Fall Star game, and I stood over at the bullpen as, I forget his name. It was one of the Giants prospects was warming up. And it was so quiet at the Fall Star game, you could hear the spin of the ball. Like he was throwing it to, and doing his bullpen session, he was throwing it, and you could you could hear the ball spinning in the air. It was so quiet. And I was like, well, this is kind of cool. It was like almost kind of weird because I was sitting right behind the catcher taking pictures, and it was like, this is kind of scary almost.
Well, and the Arizona Fall League is much more populated than, or much more better attended than the Arizona Complex League as it's now.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I mean, those games are still not sold out either. But yeah, there's a lot of room to grow. And of course, MLB screwed up and still continues to screw up the Arizona Fall League because it runs it and it staffs it. And so that's a whole nother ball of wax. But yeah, that was fun. That was a fun time. Good time.
Yeah, it was. Mr. Sewage?
Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me. If I were to say what I really want to say, I'd get emotional. But all I'll say is...
Say it. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
More than the team, I really appreciate the community of A's fans and the connection that we all have in good times and bad. And this is a bad time right now, and I feel like it's made our connections even stronger. And I am really proud to be a part of a fan base that's sure as hell not going down without a fight. And I have loved to see everybody's reactions to this, the things that Last Dive Bar have been doing, and the things that people have been doing, just on Twitter and on the street. And frankly, I've seen people with hashtag sell in a sign in their apartment windows, just driving down the street. A's fans exist and are many and are strong. And no matter what happens here, we got to do what we can to take this community spirit that we all have for the A's and keep it for Oakland and keep it for each other. And I'm just really proud to be a part of the A's fan base.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. And actually,
Well said.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe I didn't even say this, but my grandson's name is Oakland. Because my son-in-law, born and raised in Phoenix, but before the Diamondbacks were there, so basically you had the A's fans and the Dodgers fans, and that's how everybody was divided. And he is a diehard Oakland A's fan, and we're out in Arkansas right now. I'm waiting for grandson number 2 to be born, but he insisted that his son. So my daughter said, "Okay, I guess my son's going to be named Oakland too," but it's not Oakland; it's Oakland, Len, because my son-in-law's name is Kellen, Len. But I mean, he's, we talk about this stuff all the time, and he's heartbroken. I mean, just because of what it's evolved to. He's like, it's not, and he's the one who even started saying, it's not about baseball anymore. It's about everything else other than baseball, and that saddens him. He's part of your internal community. Like he bleeds the green and gold like you all do. I'm sort of an outsider that's, I have my foot in the water, but I sure have all the empathy in the world for you. And Patrick, what you said was just so beautiful, because you're right. I mean, you're all a welcoming community, and as long as you're real and who you are, you accept everybody, warts and all, and that's beautiful. That's not something that happens all the time.
No, it's a good community. I've made, at this point, countless friends that I've met at games or talked to on A's Twitter, and including both of you. And every now and then I'll talk, to Elizabeth, and I'll be like, "Oh, my friend Kim," and she's like, "Is this musician friend or baseball friend?" It's like, "This is a baseball friend," because it's like you guys are a part of something that's been important to me my entire life. And now that I'm an adult, it's different being able to talk and all that kind of stuff to all you guys from all over the world, basically. But it is a good community, and the fact that you see people meeting up at bars and tailgating together that would otherwise never cross paths. They don't live near each other. They don't go to the same kinds of things, but we all have this one commonality, Yeah. And it is important. And I think if you're not caught up in Ted Lasso, this is a spoiler, but Rebecca gave a good speech 2 episodes ago, where she's talking to the other soccer owners. And as I was watching that, in real time, I was tweeting it, because I was like, this is to John Fisher and Dave Cavill. You might be owners of this team, but it does not belong to you. It belongs to this community. It belongs to all the kids whose dads took them to the game, that scraped some money together and brought their own sandwiches and stuff like that to go sit in the nosebleeds to watch Jose Canseco and Ricky Henderson and Mark McGuire. Those were my guys. Those will always be my guys. You can move this team wherever you want. That is going to be my team, right? Because I was of that perfect age for that. Mm-hmm. This does not belong to Dave Cavill and John Fisher. It doesn't belong to Rob Manfred. It belongs to us. And those memories that we've got, my best baseball memory wasn't even at the stadium. It was at a Buffalo Wild Wings, game 162, 2012. Because I couldn't get a ticket because it sold out, because Oakland sells out baseball games. And I was there, and the whole restaurant was full of A's fans, filled. And we watched the entire game. And by the end of that, they were chanting and celebrating and buying people beers as if we were all at the Coliseum. And it's like, if I can celebrate at a Wild Wings in Dublin, 25 miles away from the ballpark, with this community, and all these cool people I've met, and it's just been, like Patrick said, the greatest loss is definitely that we won't have this thing to bring us all together anymore, because I'm not following them to Vegas, and I don't think most people are. I might check the box score, but I'm not going to care, because my team is in Oakland.
When Oakland comes together, honestly, I've never been in a community that is more beautiful than when it comes together. That game 162, I was there, but other times when, this community, whether it's around baseball or anything else, but when it has rallied together, there's nobody better. There's no place I'd rather be. It's so amazing.
No, it's the best. Yeah. Ginger's in the comments, says, Tony and I met on Twitter, then in real life when she won tickets from Vince Cotroneo. He was giving them away, gave away his seats. We sat with her. Vive used to give me her unused seats every now and then. And I sat with Eli, and I've met like all these guys that, these people that I've hung out with. And me and my friend Sierra met through A's Twitter. We went to a game, saw a guy almost die in the bar. I mean, we have this story forever. But yeah, it's so much more than just a game. The game, baseball, it's almost always, if you're with the right people, we keep saying it's not about baseball anymore. It's almost always not been about baseball to a point, but now it's even more disconnected than it was before.
Yeah.
So with that, I bid us all farewell. Thank you for Kim and Patrick for joining us. I hope everybody enjoyed the chat. If you would like to be a guest on the show, shoot me a DM on social media, and we'll get you on next week. I have an interview with Casey Pratt coming out. It's going to be pre-recorded. It's not going to be live, so we're doing that tomorrow, so it'll probably be out later tomorrow. You can find it here on YouTube, or you can find it on the anywhere you get podcasts. Just look up Uprooted from Oakland. And with that, I say goodnight to everyone.
Thanks. Bye, Patrick.
Thank you.
Bye, Tony.